Hallelujah. Hallelujah el bekodsho, Hallelujah birkiahuzo, Hallelujah vigvorotav, Hallelujah kerov kudlo, Hallelujah beteka shofar, Hallelujah benevel v'chinor, Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah. Hallelujah betof machol, Hallelujah b'minim v'gav, Hallelujah b'tziltzele shama, Hallelujah b'tziltzele shama, Hallelujah b'tziltzele truah, kol anshama ti'avelya, Hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah.
Shalom, everyone, and welcome to our program. I'm Rabbi Larry Englander, and I'd like to introduce to you my Israeli co-host, student Rabbi Smadar Bilik.
Shalom lechulam, shalom, Rabbi Englander. It is my pleasure to be with you and to welcome all of you to our program, Rise Up for Reform Judaism in Israel. Together with you, Rabbi Englander. I actually remember you, Rabbi, from my days growing up in the Reform congregation of Darchei Noam in Ramat HaSharon, which has been twined for many years with Solel congregation, where you have served. I believe that this was the first time I was exposed to the power of Jewish peoplehood and to the meaning of Klal Israel. I really want to thank our Canadian friends for rising up for the Israel Reform movement once again this year.
And also I want to say a thank you to Len Udau, the cantorial soloist of Temple Shalom in Winnipeg, for singing Leonard Cohen's melody, Hallelujah, to the Hebrew words of Psalm 150, as it is heard in many Israeli and Canadian Reform congregations.
And now, Rabbi, are we ready to continue our program?
Yes, we are. I just want to tell everyone watching that you'll be able to make a donation throughout this program and even afterward. We continue now with the playing of Hatikvah, sung by the joint choirs of Temple Emmanuel Toronto and the Toronto Jewish Chorus under the direction of Judy Edelman Gershon.
Nefesh
I want to ask, why is the Israeli reform movement worth supporting? To begin an answer to that question, we want to share some very exciting news.
For the very first time in Israel's young history, a Reform rabbi has been elected to the Knesset. Let's hear from Rabbi Gilad Kariv from his Knesset office.
Shalom, it is my pleasure to be here in the Knesset with Rabbi Gilad Kariv, the first Knesset member who is a Reform rabbi. It's a pleasure to see you here today and to be speaking to the Canadian Reform Jewish community.
Thank you, David. Shalom. Welcome to the Israeli Parliament. Shalom, chaverim v'chaverot. It's a real pleasure to have this opportunity, not only to talk with you, but also to send message to our dear friends overseas.
I'd like you to give us your vision of where the Israel Reform movement needs to move in the upcoming short-term and long-term, and at the same time, how the Canadian Jewish community can interact with the Israel movement.
And there is a direct link between the growth of the movement and the fact that I'm serving in the Knesset today. And this is still the message. If we want to create a real impact on the future of the Israeli society, we need to make sure that we build a strong and thriving Israeli reform movement. And then, because we have this wide and strong base, we will have educators and we'll have rabbis and we'll have social activists and we'll also have Israeli politicians that are totally identified with our values and institutions. And we need, in the end, also the direct involvement of North American Jews, Americans, and Canadians in our journey to build a strong and a thriving, well-rooted, influential movement in Israel. There are no shortcuts. It is more important to build 50 new Israeli congregations across the country than having a Reform rabbi in the Israeli Knesset, and I'm saying it as the first Reform rabbi in the Israeli Knesset.
Thank you. As a final thought, I'd like you to just add anything you would like to say to all the friends in Canada, so many of whom you know personally, so many of whom you visited numerous times. It's a special community.
It's not only a special community, it's a special personal and institutional relationship. And for me, always, the Canadian Reform congregations, the Canadian Reform rabbis, and the Canadian Reform lay leaders were the closest allies of our movement. And the first people I always went in order to share new ideas, in order to present new programs, new ideas, were my Canadian friends. So for me, the fact that the first interview I'm doing on behalf of the movement as a past president and as a delegate in the Israeli Knesset, the fact that I'm doing it for our beloved Canadian Reform community, this is a way to present my personal gratitude to the long-standing friendship and partnership. So חברים, תודה רבה מהכנסת בירושלים.
Hi, my name is Veronica Botnick from Salel Congregation in Mississauga, Ontario, and we're twinning with Darkei Noam in Israel. I rise up for Reform Judaism in Israel, and you can too. Please donate now.
During the recent conflict between Israel and Hamas, the Israel Reform movement has reached out to provide relief for the hardest hit communities. Smadar, from your perspective on the ground, can you tell us something about this?
Sure. Thank you, Rabbi Englander, for addressing this important subject. The INPJ and its congregation have been involved throughout the years in so many issues in Israeli society, as we have continued doing through this last crisis. Keren Bekavod, INPJ's Center for Social and Communal Responsibility, has provided food supplies for families in bomb shelters, as well as toys for children who were forced to stay inside for many days. We also have a project called Shchenim, Neighbors, in which several groups from IMPJ congregations and neighboring Arab towns meet for study and discussion. This is a unique project because the encounters are between families and often take place in each other's homes. These groups, as well as other rabbis and lay leaders in our movement, have been involved with different initiatives during the last month, aiming to lower the flames and restore our fragile shared society and coexistence.
Toda rabba Smadar for sharing this. It's encouraging for us to know that IMPJ is on the ground to promote our Reformed Jewish values. Now, I want to tell our viewers today that as well as dealing with ethical and spiritual matters in our program, we also have a cultural component. One of our aims is to introduce us Canadians to popular Israeli songs that have found their way into Reformed synagogues.
Our first selection should be familiar to you. We'll hear the choir of Temple Sinai, Toronto sing Lu Yehi, Naomi Shemer's answer to Beatles' Let It Be.
עוד יש מפרש לבן באופק מול ענן שחור כבד, כל שנבקש לא יהי. ואם בחלונות הערב אור נרות החג רועד, כל שנבקש לא יהי. לא יהי, לא יהי, רנה לא יהי, כל שנבקש לא יהי. לא יהי, לא יהי, רנה לא יהי, כל שנבקש לא יהי. אם המבשר עומד בדלת תן מילה טובה בפיו, כל שנבקש לא יהי. אם נפשך למות שואלת מפריחה ומאסיף, כל שנבקש לא יהי. לא יהי, לא יהי, רנה לא יהי, כל שנבקש לא יהי. לא יהי, לא יהי, רנה לא יהי, כל שנבקש לא יהי. בתוך שכונה קלה מוצלת בית קט עם גג אדום, כל שנבקש לא יהי. זה סוף הקיץ, סוף הדרך, תן להם לשוב הלום, כל שנבקש לא יהי. לא יהי, לא יהי, רנה לא יהי, כל שנבקש לא יהי. לא יהי, לא יהי, רנה לא יהי, כל שנבקש לא יהי.
The Israel Reform Movement have reached a very exciting milestone this year, the publication of a new Siddur for our movement. By combining traditional prayers with contemporary Israeli song and poetry, Siddur Tfilat Ha'adam opens up new possibilities for congregational worship. In this way, the Israel Reform Movement is creating a new expression of Judaism that will impact upon the religious and spiritual identity of Israel.
And this Siddur can also have a creative impact within our own Canadian congregations, as you will hear in this interview between Rabbi Gila Kane of Temple Beth Ora of Edmonton and Rabbi Professor Dalia Marks, one of the editors of the new Siddur.
Okay, shalom. Hi. I'm Rabbi Gila Kane. I'm the rabbi at Temple Beth Ora in Edmonton, Alberta. And with me today is Rabbi Dalia Marks, who is a professor of liturgy at HUC in Jerusalem. Shalom, Dalia.
Good to be with you.
Lovely to see you as well. So today we're going to be talking about the new Israeli Siddur, Tfilat Adam, of whom Dalia is one of the co-authors, together with Rabbi Alona Lisitzia. And I would first like to ask you about the name of the Siddur, Tfilat Adam. Why that name?
Tfilat Adam goes back to the first story of creation, where we were created as Adam, as human beings, before the divisions between nations and even before the divisions between sexes. But I like the way our teacher, Professor Larry Hoffman, translated it. This is the prayer that makes us human. And also, these are the final words of Chana Senesh's poem, Halicha leKesaria, Eli, Eli, that represents for many Israelis the mere opportunity or possibility to pray from words that are not necessarily always just the traditional words, but also new words of prayer.
That's wonderful. So do you want to say just a word, because this Siddur was very outgoing. It was trying to reach not just inside the Reform community in Israel. So how was it accepted by the Israeli society?
Well, way better than we thought. We have to start to create a new edition now. This is the first time that our books are in all the bookstores, right? You go to Stimatsky and you see piles of Tfilat Adam. That's the first time we have a movement book in just normal bookstores. So this is very, very moving to us. There were commercials on the radio, we were on television, many interviews, so it was very well received.
If we have time, do you want to bring up just one text that I here in Edmonton have found to be very useful for our own tefillot from your Siddur, and we found a translation for it. Elohei haruchot lechol basar. You wrote it as a prayer after the Hitnatkut, after the separation from the Gaza.
The disengagement process in 2005.
Yes, yeah, and it's a very beautiful prayer.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it is a beautiful prayer.
I'm surprised that you used
it. And I'll tell you why I used it. And this is bringing in a bit of a Canadian context, just for a few seconds. We use it in our shul very often as the land acknowledgement at the beginning of our service. We sometimes use more traditional land acknowledgements, but very often we bring this in specifically because it allows us to connect both with what is happening in Israel and in what is happening here in Canada as well. So thank you for allowing us to use this prayer in our services as well. I would like to ask, do you think there's going to be a way of Canadian Jews approaching the Siddur and acquiring it?
Yes, of course. First, you can order it from wherever you are, but the really exciting news is that we are working now on the translation of the Shabbat liturgy, not yet the entire Siddur, but the Shabbat liturgy into English, and it's going to be English-Hebrew edition. Yeah, Rabbi Levi Weinman-Kelman and Rabbi Efrat Rotem are working on the translation.
Wonderful. Toda rabba, Rabbi Dalia. This has been very, very enjoyable talking with you, and I hope many people get to know the Siddur, get to go into it, read all the beautiful poetry and readings that are in it, and enjoy its creativity and its traditionalism. Toda rabba.
Besimcha.
Shalom.
Hi, my name is David Abramson from Temple Emmanuel Beth Sholem in Westmount, Quebec. I rise up for Reform Judaism in Israel, and you can too. Please donate now.
Hi, my name is Mark Hydra from Temple B'nai Tikva in Calgary, Alberta. I rise up for Reform Judaism in Israel, and you can too. Please donate now.
Moshe kibel Torah miSinai. Moses received Torah on Mount Sinai and transmitted it to Joshua. So teaches Pirkei Avot in the Mishnah, which adds 3 teachings: be deliberate in judgment, raise up many disciples, and make a fence around the Torah.
The Israeli composer and songwriter Shlomo Gronich has put this teaching to music. It is sung here by Rabbi Oded Mazor, and musical ensemble from Kehilat Kol HaNeshama. But in this arrangement, we have a special treat added. Following the words of Pirkei Avot, which describes the patriarchal chain of tradition, our very own Rabbi Rinat Spania has added a matriarchal chain, beginning with Miriam.
Elohei haruchot, Hoshiana,
Hoshiana,
Bochen levavot, Hatzlichana,
Hatzlichana,
Goel chazak aneinu, Beyom koreinu.
משה קיבל תורה מסיני ומסרה ליהושע, לזקנים וזקנים ונביאים מסרוה לאנשי כנסת הגדולה. הם אמרו שלושה דברים, הבו מדונים בדים ועמידו תלמידים הרבה. הסוס ירד לתורה, הם אמרו שלושה דברים, הבו מדונים בדים ועמידו תלמידים הרבה. הסוס ירד לתורה. מרים קיבלה תורה מסיני ומסרתה לבנות צלופחד, ובנות צלופחד לדבורה, ודבורה לרות, ורות מסרתה לברויה. הן אמרו שלושה דברים, השמיעו את קולכם ועמידו תלמידות הרבה, ועשו דרש לתורה. תלמידים הרבה, והסוס יד לתורה. הן אמרו שלושה דברים, השמיעו את קולכם ועמידו תלמידות הרבה, ועשו דרש לתורה. משה קיבל תורה מסיני.
Shalom. My name is Rabbi Mira Chovav of Ramot Shalom Congregation of Be'er Sheva. We're twinned with Temple Sinai of Toronto, where we have wonderful supporters, great friends with whom we feel so close even when we're so far away from each other. We wish to thank each and every one of our Canadian friends and supporters who are rising up for Reform Judaism in Israel. We wouldn't be able to do any of what we're doing without your support. Thank you so much. Hoping to see you very soon, either in Be'er Sheva or in Toronto. L'shana haba b'Be'er Sheva. Leitraot.
Hi, I'm Judith Wiley from Temple Israel in London, Ontario. I rise for Reform Judaism in Israel, and you can too. Please donate now.
Within the Israel Reform movement, I work for a program called Domin, which means alike. Our job is to arrange for twinning between Israeli Reform communities and congregations in the rest of the world.
Canada is blessed to have several of these twinning relationships. We will hear now from Penny Fine of City Shul with her twin, Rabbi Galit Cohen Kedem, spiritual leader of Kehilat Kodesh V'chol in Cholon.
You know, Larry, Kodesh V'chol is actually my present congregation, so I am very excited to hear what Penny and Rabbi Galit have to share.
Shalom, I'm Penny Fine. I'm a member of City Shul here in Toronto, and it is my huge privilege to introduce Rabbi Galit Cohen Kedem, who is the founding rabbi of Kehilat Kodesh V'chol. She started her congregation back 11 years ago. 10 years ago, she started a little school, a nursery school, which has grown to a school of 200 plus students, ranging in ages from 3 to 12. And alongside this, a flourishing and vibrant Reform community in Holon. Galit, tell us how you did it and why.
Thank you, Penny. Well, we did it thanks to your support and friendship, you know that. But aside of that, I would like to say that as parents, we always look for the best educational options for our children. Usually we think we want to educate our kids according to how we see life and our ideology. But here what happened is a little bit of the opposite, because really it's a congregation that built an educational system. And in fact, this educational system built a community. So really, thanks to the kids that feel part of this educational track, the parents are affiliated with the Reform movement. Most Israelis in Holon are working class, either secular or traditional, many from Sephardic backgrounds. So being part of a Reform movement couldn't have been on their path unless the educational system, which is part of the governmental free public school system in Holon, enables them to do so. So it's really an upside down story that says that we can sometimes start bottom up and not just top to bottom.
It can't have been easy establishing your community in Holon. Tell a little bit about the challenges you faced and your look to the future and some of the good news you have to share with us.
So really to build an alternative to the existing system within the public sphere is always somewhat of a challenge, right? Because you are trying to show that there is an alternative, that a female Reform rabbi can lead services within a public school or teach Torah, right? And have bat mitzvah and not just bar mitzvah within this system. So it's not always, it hasn't been easy because here we're dealing with governmental funding and we're dealing with local politics that are, as we all know, very complicated. I can say that just last week, after 7 years, and in cooperation with the Israeli Center for Religious Action, we have won a court order, and also we have passed within City Council the vote to allocate a piece of land to us, and we hope and we plan in the next 3 to 4 years to build the first ever Reform campus here in Holon that will include 3 kindergartens and a sanctuary. So I think that really says it all about how you can start with a dream and just a minion of families that say, maybe we can do this, maybe we can change the system.
Toda rabba, you always inspire us, and may you go from strength to strength, and I so look forward to seeing you in person. Shalom.
Toda rabba.
Hi, my name is Ilana Dotan from the Keilat Darchei Noam in Ramat HaShalom.
And I'm Eli Yoel Levin, the rabbi of Darchei Noam congregation in Ramat HaShalom.
We have been twined with the Soleil congregation in Mississauga for many years. I wish to thank our Canadian friends who are rising up for Reform Judaism in Israel.
And I would like to thank you so much for your support, and we really appreciate our sisterhood.
Rabbi Or Zohar is an Israeli singer and composer affiliated with the Reform movement who has composed beautiful melodies for liturgical settings.
We'll now hear cantors David Rosen and Benny Meissner of Holy Blossom Temple, Toronto, singing Rabbi Zohar's melody for Lecha Dodi, a song to welcome Shabbat.
Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat, nikavela, lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat, nikavela, lecha Dodi, likrat kala. Shamor vezachor b'dibur echad, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלחם, כי אם בכל הברכה מראש מתהתם נסוכה, סוף מעשינו מחשבה תחילה. אחד אותי לקראת כלה, בשלום התרא בעלה גם בשמחה ובצהלה תכנוני עם סגלה בואי חלה בואי חלה וחלואים לקראת חלה פני שבת נקבלה לחלואים לקראת חלה פני שבת נקבלה לחלואים לקראת חלה לחלואים לקראת חלה.
Shalom, my name is Rabbi Nir Parkin and I'm speaking to you from Kehilat Yozma in Modi'in. Canada has been a mountain for us, a role model for us. My work with Canada is thanks to your rabbis. My work with you is thanks to the fact that I feel at home in Canada. We're all one people. And for me, being part of you, and for me, your help for us, your assistance, you're making us possible. You're making the Reform Judaism in Israel a reality. And for that, I thank you so much.
A strong bond between our two movements is formed by our teen and youth organizations, Noar Telem in Israel and NIFTY, North American Federation of Temple Youth.
We are privileged now to hear from Canadian Adam Saul and Israeli Gabi Diamond Kakal in conversation with each other.
Hi, I'm Eli Saul. I'm the president of NIFTY now. I am joined by...
I'm Gabi Diamond Kassal, and I'm the co-chair of the Youth Leadership Committee of Noar Telem, which is the Israeli Reform Youth Movement.
And we are coming at you from a recording to talk a bit about ourselves and Jewish youth in Canada and Israel. So, Gabi, we have been talking, we've heard that we both have some social action themes going on in our youth group. So what do you guys do?
So in my youth movement, one of our core values that we plan our activities by is Tikkun Olam, which in Hebrew means making the world a better place. And we really tried to do that, whether it's going to different protests that happen in Israel for issues that we believe in, going to the Pride March together as a youth movement, and whether it's doing different volunteer work. We made this past Purim, we made mishlochei manot, packages for people in need and gave them out to people, and all sorts of stuff like that we do together as a youth movement. And we encourage all of our kids to take part in that and to bring ideas for different social activism, things that we can do. What about you guys?
That's awesome. In my little synagogue, or not so little synagogue, youth group, we have what we call our bagel box project. So on Mother's Day, well, it's not happening this year because of COVID, but in past years, we would spend an entire night packaging bagels and orange juice and cream cheese and all that stuff and package them up. And then the next day we would deliver them to congregants and to women's shelters all over the city. Nell, my little region of NIFTY, in past years have done some learning about social action issues and projects. And this coming year, if we can return to in-person events, I intend on doing some in-person, hands-on social action stuff.
Thank you for having us here. We're looking forward for more opportunities to connect between Israel and Canada.
And all the best.
Hi,
My name is Teresa Quiroz from Holy Blossom Temple in Toronto, Canada. I rise up for Reform Judaism in Israel, and so can you. Please donate now.
We now come to a very special musical presentation. Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak Kook, the first Ashkenazic chief rabbi of Palestine, taught and practiced the love of all Jews, from ultra-Orthodox to secular and everything in between. He urges us to rise up in spirit, just as we now rise up in support of our Israeli Reform movement.
We'll hear the world debut of this arrangement by Judy Edelman Gershon, sung by cantors and soloists from both our countries.
Rise up, mortal one, rise up, for you have wings of spirit, wings of majestic eagles. Seek after them, and they will find you.
Hi, my name is Shlomo Harel and I'm the chair of Congregation Bavat Ayin in Rosh Ha'ain. And we are twinned with Congregation Temple Emmanuel of Toronto, Canada. I wish to thank our Canadian friends who are rising up for Reform Judaism in Israel with great commitment and solidarity in good times and bad. Thank you so much for your support. We salute you.
Another domain twinning partnership is between Temple Shalom of Vancouver and Keilat Shir Chadash of Tzur Hadassah.
We'll hear the dialogue between Rabbis Stacy Blank and Carrie Brown, followed by Temple Shalom's cantor Shani Cohen singing the 1995 Eurovision entry, Amen.
So hi, everybody. Great to see you and be connected between our congregations, Temple Shalom here in Vancouver and Shir Chadash there in Tzur Hadassah. We love our connection. It's been such a pleasure for the past 7-8 years to have this pairing between our communities, both in terms of visiting in person, which has been a highlight of my time spent in Israel to join the congregation, and Shabbat. And my connection with Rabbi Stacy Blank, of course, is dear to me. But also, what I love is our connection between our B'nai Mitzvah students. I love having those Zoom conversations, between our communities for the kids to be able to learn from one another and know that they have these connections between Vancouver and Israel.
Yes, and it's been wonderful for us in Tzur Hadassah as well, knowing that we have friends in North America and Canada who care so much for us, and we've also held meetings together or our conferences where we've shared information on what's happening in Israel. I've had the pleasure of being hosted at Temple Shalom and getting to meet all the wonderful people. Being a part of the Women's Seder was especially a highlight, and certainly welcoming people into our community and making those personal connections. There isn't something, in my eyes, more meaningful than that. So, Gisa, you were hosted by a family in Tzur Hadassah.
I was. It was an absolute highlight of our journey in Israel. And the intimacy of meeting a stranger, but feeling like sisters and brothers was incredible. And the dinner together, the discussion, the differences in our lives and the similarities, it was something I'll never forget. I think that this connection of the synagogues and the reform movement between our country and your country is just fantastic. And I would do it again in a minute.
Thank you. And Carrie, one of our veteran hosters in Tzur Hadassah.
So I just wanted to say that hosting families from another kehillah was a very, very important, informative experience, I think, for my children and for our family, and really expanded their horizons. And it was amazing how we could make these very personal connections just in a Friday night dinner. And it was so interesting and enriching and fun.
Thank you. And we are so looking forward to meeting again. In the meantime, we have Zoom, and we look forward to strengthening connection even more. Kol Israel Arabim Zeh Lezeh. We really feel the connection and responsibility for each other, no matter how far away.
I'm Cantor Shani Cohen from Temple Shalom in Vancouver.
בתפילה אמן שעולם אמן כל הנשמה תהלליה אמן ותן ברכת שלום ושמור על ביתנו קרב אותנו לחלום שבתוכנו תן תמיד ברכה במעשה ידינו פתח ליבנו שתמיד נשיר לך אלוהי אמן תקוותיי עטוף אותנו תן לנו חיים ושמור עלינו, תן שתתגשם אהבתנו, תן לנו ברכה האר פנינו, פתח ליבנו שתמיד נשיר לך.
My name is Tina Hawazari. I'm from Temple, Israel, Ottawa. We are twinned with Poteach Sha'arim in northern Israel. I rise up for Reform Judaism in Israel. You can too. Please donate now.
Along with all these successes, the Israel Reform movement also faces some serious challenges. Unlike Orthodox congregations who receive free land and subsidies to build their synagogues, Reform congregations sometimes face an uphill battle. Smadar, can you give us an example?
Sure. For example, Keilat Bavat Ain in Rosh Ha'ain has been involved for a long time in a struggle with the municipality to receive permission to build their synagogue. We'll hear now from Rabbi Ayala Miron speaking with her twin Lee Weiser from Temple Emmanuel, Toronto.
Rabbi Ayala, it's always wonderful to have an opportunity to connect with you. The amazing partnership between Temple Emmanuel in Toronto and Bavat Ayin in Rosh Ha'ain has been nurtured over the years, and we continue to gain strength from one another. What would you say has been your biggest success as a congregation?
Our biggest success throughout the 17 years that Bavat Ayin, since Bavat Ayin has started, is the fact that we are still here and we're not going anywhere. The fact that despite the different efforts to discourage and to pressure us, even to push us out of Rosh Ha'ain, we are still here, thriving, growing, offering different programs and offering life cycle events, study sessions, and prayers where women and men can sit side by side and take an equal part is our big success.
Wonderful. And what has been your biggest challenge?
So our biggest challenge throughout the years has been building ourselves a permanent home. This process has taken already over 15 years that we've asked the municipality to allocate land for a building or a building for us, but the city is finding every reason possible not to give us what is so right that we will have. So this did not happen.
Can you explain why it's so difficult to get land for a Reform synagogue in Israel?
Yeah, I think the situation in Israel is very unique in that 93% of the land in Israel is nationally owned. That means that in order to build a public house, you have to get an allocation from the government. In our case, it's the municipality, the city of Rosh Ha'ain. And when this is not happening, we cannot build our own house just on our own. We have to go through this process of allocation. So while the city of Rosh Ha'ain has over 140 Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox synagogues, it did not find it right to give the Reform congregation for 17 years one building to be at our own place.
You know, I visited Rosh Hashanah in 2018, and I actually saw a piece of land on which you were going to build your synagogue. What happened to that land?
That's a very good question. The municipality ended up building an Orthodox synagogue on that piece of land, and that was allocated to us. And you know, we were offered another piece of land, but now we have to go through a very long objection process. And now that we have the objections, we have to answer them, and this is going to take a long time.
That sounds so challenging. So where does the congregation worship now?
So actually, we have a space in the local community center that we are renting. So actually, we are paying in order to have a place to pray. This has been our situation for the last 12 years, and this is going to be in the near future as well.
That sounds so hard. How do you and your congregation stay positive in the face of all these disappointments?
So we have to keep our faith, our emunah, and we can look at the Bible stories as an inspiration. For example, Jacob that waited 7 years to marry Rachel, and after 7 years, he understood that it's going to take another 7 years. So we've been in the struggle for 15 years. We're hopeful that in the not too far future, we can celebrate that.
I hope so, and we're always here to stand with you side by side.
So I want to take this opportunity, Lee, to say thank you to all our Canadian partners and friends who support us in our efforts and are helping us to realize our dreams. Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Butel from Temple Sinai Congregation in Toronto, and we're twinned with Kehilat Ramot Shalom in Beersheba. I rise up for Reform Judaism in Israel, and you can too. Please donate now.
Despite the challenges that we've been hearing about, the Israel Reform movement remains optimistic and determined to win the hearts of more and more Israelis.
During the pandemic, we've learned that over 1 million Israelis have connected with us over the internet. We continue to reach out to them as thousands of Israelis come to our synagogues each year for bar and bat mitzvah celebrations and other life cycle events.
With our Canadian support, which you can give right this minute, we can contribute to their outreach effort so that this growing trend will continue. Even during the recent crisis in the Middle East, our Israeli friends have maintained spiritual resilience within each of their communities. And now, here is Tara Abrams, cantorial soloist emerita from Temple Har Zion in Thornhill, to sing a song that expresses this stubborn optimism.
כשאני רואה בחלוני את שמוריק לך וגם לי, אני שר לעצמי איזה אחלה עולם. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed day and the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. וכל צבעי הקשת יפים וחדשים, פרוסים אחרי הגשם על פני האנשים, והיום כה יפה וקל לי כל כך לומר שאני אוהב אז אני שר לעצמי איזה אחלה עולם. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I missed you. Hashemayim chulim, anan hu lavan, ve'haboker bahir, u'belayla yishan, ve'achlom le'atzmi, eze achla olam. Ani שר לעצמי איזה אחלה עולם.
Hi everyone, my name is Andres Sana and I'm from Temple Emmanuel in Toronto. Our congregation is twinned with the Bavatine congregation in Rosh Ha'ain, Israel. I rise up for Reform Judaism in Israel, and you can too. Please donate now.
We have some additional wonderful news to report to you. Just recently, the Israeli Supreme Court ruled that conversions to Judaism in Israel, officiated by Reform and conservative rabbis, are now legitimate under Israeli law.
Eze besarot tovot, what wonderful news. Let's hear directly from Rabbi Galia Sadan, the first woman to serve as head of the Israeli Reform Beit Din, and she's in conversation with Len Bates, president of the Reform Movement in Canada.
Good evening. My name is Len Bates and as president of the Reformed Jewish Community of Canada, it's my pleasure to speak with Rabbi Galia Sadan. Rabbi Galia Sadan is the head of the Reform Beit Din in Israel, and she's going to speak about the recent Supreme Court ruling in Israel surrounding conversions in Israel. So, first question for you this evening, welcome. Why was the ruling so important to Israelis who convert to Judaism outside the Orthodox movement?
Any ruling regarding the Reform movement is important because it creates an echo and it makes us known in Israel. You have to understand that the Reform movement is really a small, the Reform movement in Israel is a small community of a few thousands of people, so it's very important to know about the Reform movement. So that's very important. The second thing is that because of the process of citizenship in Israel is really long, it turns out that although we accept for conversion only people that are already in the process of becoming a citizen, this ruling enables them to shorten the time or to shorten the time until they get full citizenship.
So tell me, why did the Supreme Court have to get involved?
Well, the problem with the question of who's Jewish goes way back in the history of Israel. Unfortunately, everything that has to do with the Reform movement and with Reform conversion in Israel has to go through the Supreme Court. Every little step in the way regarding the recognition of the Reform movement as a legitimate stream of Judaism, a legitimate way to get married, a legitimate way to be converted, a legitimate way to officiate as a rabbi, as a regional rabbi or a city rabbi. Every little step has to go through the court because of political issues and the monopoly that Orthodoxy has here in Israel.
Okay, so in respect to the recent ruling, what has the impact been?
I think that the impact is enormous. It is amazing how people that were converted in the 80s and the 90s and were never registered as Jews because, as I said, the ruling came only in 2002 and they weren't aware of their possibility to register as Jews, come to us and say, listen, I converted through the Reform movement back there and I want to be registered. We are dealing now with a person that I think they're 75 or something like that. And now finally they realize that they can be registered as Jews. And also what we see is that our classes are double the size that they were a month ago. Within 2-3 weeks, people are just coming and the phone does not stop ringing. And the media is busy with what does it mean to be a Reformed Jew. And so, of course, the impact goes way beyond conversion. It means more people are exposed to the Reform option for Bat and Bar Mitzvah, for any life cycle ceremonies, just joining our congregations as members. And I'm saying that the irony is that the more the Orthodox and especially the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredi, raise their voices against this ruling, the more it becomes an item and the more we become known. So we really hope that this will give a huge push for the Reform movement here in Israel, not only in terms of conversion, but in any aspect. And we are very optimistic regarding that and thrilled with the High Court ruling.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Sedan. Erev Tov and Lehitrot.
Lehitrot.
In the past several years, the Israeli population has become enamored with the music of Mizrahi Jews, those who emigrated from Arab lands. The Israel Reform movement is embracing this rich culture and incorporating it into their communities.
The following selection, whose music is composed by Avihu Medina, has become extremely popular in Israel weddings and simchas. It is performed here by cantor Evan Cohen of Keilat Har'el of Jerusalem, accompanied by his father Asa.
Hallelujah. name is Noah Fujikawa. And my name is Levi Fujikawa. We're brothers from City Shul in Toronto, Canada. We rise up for Reform Judaism in Israel. And you can too. Please donate now.
We hope you've enjoyed our program. And for the very few of you who haven't yet made a donation, now would be a perfect time. The donations page will remain on the screen as we listen to a melody sung by Rabbi Corey Weiss and cantor Rachel Littman from Temple Har Zion in Thornhill, accompanied by Eleanor Rice. Ephraim Shamir's Nigun Hayadata.
As we emerge from the pandemic and from the past crisis in Israel, your donations will provide a material shot in the arm for our Israel Reform movement and congregations. We are deeply moved by your support during this past year and during the difficult month that Israel has been through. Together with you, we pray for peace and hope for our people and for our neighbors. We send you our deepest thanks and welcome you to visit us soon. לשנה הבאה בירושלים.
תודה, להתראות.